Hello everyone and welcome to another deck tech brought to you by the Trinisphere. Today we are going to be looking at Teysa Karlov. But before we get into all that fun, make sure that you share, like, subscribe. It helps out the channel and it helps us bring you more videos like this and breakdowns of decks. So let's jump right in by talking about our commander. Teysa Karlov is 2, a white and a black, for a 2/4 human advisor that says if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And creature tokens you control have vigilance and lifelink. So there's a couple different directions that I thought about taking this. At first I was going strictly with tokens, and as you'll see as we go through, there are a couple token strategies, but I focused mostly on a whole bunch of random combos, most of which are centered around artifacts and death triggers. The breakdown for today's deck tech is going to be talking about the combos, draw, removal, ramp, and then general utility and value stuff that we have in here. To kick it off, let's talk about some combos. Our first combo is either Cathodian or Su-Chi. Any sack outlet, and we'll talk about the sack outlets in the utility, and then either Mirrorworks or Nim Deathmantle. And with Mirrorworks, you also either need the Nim Deathmantle or Enduring Renewal. So basically the way that this works is we're going to sack Cathodian, which when we sacrifice it, we are going to get 6 mana because its death trigger happens twice. So the 6 mana will pay for Nim Deathmantle to bring it back, plus we'll have 2 mana colorless net. With Su-Chi we have 4 mana colorless net, which we can also then pay for Mirrorworks and make infinite creatures, and we have infinite colorless mana at that point. Also, with the Nim Deathmantle, have infinite death triggers as well as comes into play triggers. So when we get into our utility, you can see the payoffs for that. Our second combo is probably one of the most complicated ones, but it involves either a Junk Diver, Mirror Retriever, or Workshop Assistant, a Scrap Trawler, some way to sacrifice creatures and or artifacts like Ashnod's Altar or Krark Clan Ironworks, and then that allows us to make boat tons of mana. If we sacrifice one of the creatures, we get 2 of its triggers. So let's take Mirror Retriever for example. We'll be able to get back 2 creatures with Mirror Retriever. If we have Scrap Trawler out, then we'll also be able to get something back that costs less. So let's say we have a Soul Ring in our graveyard, we have a Mana Crypt in our graveyard, either of those. We sack, or both of those, we sack Mirror Retriever. With Scrap Trawler, we're able to get both of those back. And then with Mirror Retriever, we're able to get 2 other artifacts back. We then cast the Mana Crypt, cast the Soul Ring, tap those for mana. We should have gotten 4 mana off of sacrificing the Mirror Retriever and the Scrap Trawler. Then with Nim Deathmantle or Enduring Renewal, we get those back to play by putting that mana in. We can then sacrifice the Soul Ring and sacrifice the Mana Crypt to the Krark Clan Ironworks and kind of start this whole thing over and over and over again by using the mana into Nim Deathmantle. In addition to that, we can add in a Sly Requisitioner, which allows us to get a 1/1 artifact token every time we sacrifice these, or we can have a payoff from another death trigger, as we'll see later on. Our third combo, a little bit more simplistic, is Doomed Traveler, which makes a token when it dies. If we have Teysa out, it's going to make 2 tokens when it dies, or Hunted Witness, or a Mearsire. We're going to sack those to either Ashnod's Altar or Phyrexian Altar, either of which is going to give us mana. Let's say we take the Doomed Traveler, we sacrifice it and its token to Phyrexian Altar. From that, we'll get 2 white mana. If we have Teysa out, then we'll actually have 2 tokens when it dies, so we'll net 3 white mana. If we have Enduring Renewal out, that will allow us to get the Doomed Traveler back to our hand. We pay 1 white, and then we can repeat the process, giving us infinite colored mana at that point. You can use the infinite colored mana in a variety of ways, or you can just loop this and then exploit the death trigger over and over and over again. The next one is Memnite or Ornithopter, any sack outlet, and Enduring Renewal. So Enduring Renewal is going to bring the Ornithopter or Memnite back to our hand whenever we sacrifice it. So whatever we're sacrificing to, if it's something that deals damage, we're going to deal infinite damage. If it's something that nets us mana, we're going to get infinite mana. There's a lot of different directions you can take this combo, but it's basically just going to allow us infinite enter the battlefield, leave the battlefield, and whatever the sacrifice outlet is netting us. Our next combo is Mere Moon Vessel, Ashnod's Altar, and Nim Deathmantle. So, if we have Teysa out, we will get 2 mana from Mere Moon Vessel dying, because it'll double the trigger. Ashnod's Altar will also give us 2 mana. So we net 4 mana from that, which attaches Nim Deathmantle to it, and brings it back from the graveyard. So those alone, and Ashnod's Altar, or alternately a Krark-Clan Ironworks, sacrificing Mere Moon Vessel and re-equipping from the graveyard the Nim Deathmantle every time, again gives us infinite enter the battlefield and leave the battlefield. In this case, we don't net infinite mana, but that should be enough if we have one of our death trigger outlets online. Alright, the next one is a cute little one that I like, which is Ashnod's Altar, Enduring Renewal, Perilous Mirror. Perilous Mirror costs 2, and when it dies, it does 2 damage. If we have Teysa out, it's going to end up doing 4 damage. We sacrifice the Perilous Mirror to Ashnod's Altar and or Krark-Clan Ironworks, get our 2 mana back. Enduring Renewal puts it back in our hand. We've dealt 4 damage at this point, or 2 damage at this point, depending on whether or not Teysa's out. And now we have the 2 mana floating that we can put Perilous Mirror back out and just repeat that over and over and over again. The next one is kind of a remnant of the token route that I was going to take. So we have Requiem Angel that says whenever a non-spirit token dies, you get a spirit. Then we have Divine Visitation that basically replaces any token that we get with a 4/4 angel. Whenever one thing dies, if we have Teysa out, we're going to get 2 spirits. Those spirits get replaced by angels. Now if you add a sacrifice outlet, either Phyrexian Altar or Ashnod's Altar, you will then be able to sacrifice one of those angels, triggering Requiem Angel, get 2 new angels back, and you start to either get infinite creatures or infinite death triggers and enter the battlefield triggers. Alright, so that's all of our combos. Now, as we go through this list, you're going to hear a lot of cards that may combo with these even more. It may lead to other win conditions, but those are the main ones that it was kind of based around. With that, let's move into our draw. So we don't have a ton of card draw in here, but everything that we do have bigger value because we're planning to get a lot of use out of each one. So Grim Horospex and Midnight Reaper, both every time we have a creature die, we're going to get card draw off of that. So either one of them can easily draw out most of our deck. We do take damage from it, so we have to be careful of that, but it still allows us to draw quite a few cards in a turn if we start getting a little cycle going. We also have Skull Clamp in the deck, and the Skull Clamp, if we end up with infinite mana and we have some kind of sacrifice cycle going, but it's not really going anywhere, we can start equipping the Skull Clamp to one of the tokens or one of the pieces involved in the combo, and then we'll get infinite card draw off of that too. On to removal. For removal, we have Archon of Justice, which is good removal to begin with. When it dies, you're going to exile a permanent, so you get 2 triggers off of that. Patron of the Vein, which kills something on its enter the battlefield. It also gets additional counters on it when things die, which gets doubled by Teysa. Then we have Anguished Unmaking, Crush Contraband, Swords to Plowshares, and Utter End for some spot removal. Crush Contraband and Utter End and Anguish Unmaking all allow us to hit kind of multiple types of targets. We're not limited to creatures. And then, because of all the death triggers, we have Dictate of Erebos. And then, for our combos, they kind of all can stay in our hand or bounce things back to our hand. So if we really need to clear the board and stop other people from doing any kind of recursion shenanigans or anything like that, we have Final Judgment and Merciless Eviction in here. In addition to that, we have ramp. We don't have a ton of ramp, but a lot of our things are pretty low costed, so we should be able to play out most of our pieces for 4 mana at the max. So we have Pitiless Plunderer, allowing us to exploit those death triggers and also ramping us some, as well as giving us another piece that we can sacrifice to Krark-Clan Ironworks. Solemn Simulacrum, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, and Smothering Tide. With that, we're going to go into our general utility. So we only have one tutor in here, and it's Academy Rector. There are only really 2 enchantments that you would be going for in this deck, and really only one that matters a lot. But Enduring Renewal and Dictative Erebos are going to be the biggest ones. But we do have some other ones that we can look for that we'll discuss in a bit. It's mostly there so we can get Enduring Renewal because it does just so much with so many of these pieces. Next up, we have our sack outlets. So we've already talked about a couple of them in Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar, but adding to that, we also have Arcbound Ravager, Viscera Seer, and Yeheni Undying Partisan, all of which just give us a generic outlet that will work with, for example, the Requiem Angel combo or the Memnite Ornithopter and whatever sack outlet Enduring Renewal combo. Up next, we have our recursion. Just a few pieces of recursion here. Athreos, allowing us to get things back to hand. Body Snatcher, which recurs one thing typically. With Teysa, it will recur 2 things. Lifeline, allowing us to continually get all of these combo pieces back. It's kind of like a slow version of Enduring Renewal. Living Death, for whatever reason, we've run into a whole bunch of board wipes and we have a lot of these little pieces that we need in our graveyard. We can Living Death, wipe other people's boards, bring all of our pieces back, and probably set ourselves up for a win right there. And then Open the Vaults, playing a very similar role. We have a lot of artifact-related combos here where just some artifacts will actually win us the game if we have the right ones. So if half of them end up in the graveyard, we can open the vaults and get them back. Then we have our death trigger cards. So we talked a lot in the early part of this about infinite death triggers, and we'll be able to continuously do this over and over and over. So what are the payoffs for that? So we have Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat, which are going to be our kind of main ones for death triggers. Basically, if you have infinite death triggers and you go uninterrupted, those will win you the game. Disciple of the Vault, if the combo involves the sacrificing of artifacts like the Memnite Ornithopter Enduring Renewal, Disciple of the Vault will kill someone. And then Suture Priest is a good in-between and will kill people and gain life for us. Then we have just a couple of token generators that we get a little extra value off of. Kalida's Trader of Get allows us to hate people's graveyards, so if we're setting up a Living Death and we want their graveyards to be a little bit more vulnerable, we can have a Kalida's out. Ophiomancer puts out tokens. Ophiomancer with Divine Visitation basically says that we get an angel every turn. And then Genesis Chamber, with a whole bunch of Enter the Battlefield triggers, is going to allow us to basically get Infinite Mirror. Again, Infinite Mirror with something like Divine Visitation gives us Infinite Angels. And then we have just general value, and I categorize these as general value because you can probably win the game with some combination of these, but they don't really fit into a specific combo. So we have Kukusho, which doubling the trigger from Kukusho is just too powerful to leave off of here. Pierce Strider, given enough extra mana and sack outlets and things like that, we could potentially work Pierce Strider into one of those combos, bringing it back over and over again. Scuttling Doom Engine allows us to sacrifice it, dealing 12 damage to people instead of 6. Thopter Assembly, when you have to bounce it to your hand and you get the Thopters, if you have Divine Visitation out, you basically have an army in a can. Wormcoil Engine, probably just the best artifact creature that's ever been made. Revel in Riches kind of works off the death triggers, so I could have categorized it as that, but it's also its own thing where it's just constantly gaining you value. It ramps you. It may just end up winning you the game at some point. Comes off of other people's death triggers. Moving into the least interesting part of the deck, we have the lands. I have 15 basic swamps, 15 basic plains, and then a scrublands, Fetid Heath, Marsh Flats, Godless Shrine, Wasteland, and Strip Mine for a little bit of land removal if we run into something particularly troublesome, and a Temple of the False God. That is going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys like this deck. Please, if you see another combo in here that I missed, I'm sure they're in there. Let me know other things that you would add to the deck. Make sure to comment down below. And until next time, everybody, keep brewing.